Hey, is this thing on? Are we recording? Can I get a tech person? Oh, for the love of EdTech. Visor is the tool you need to manage Chromebooks and other IT assets in your school district. Visor has teamed up with Jake Miller to offer our listeners a free signed copy of his book, Educational Duct Tape. Go to visor.cloud/loveedtech. That's VIZOR.cloud/loveedtech to find out more.
Today we have joining us Amy Romas, an educational technologist from Springboro Schools. Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing today?
We're
great.
Good.
So excited to have you on. We've known Amy for a long time, and she's going to be an awesome guest, so we're excited. So before we dive in, because we're going to have all sorts of questions and talk about some great things today, could you tell us a little bit about your journey into education and educational technology?
Yeah, sure thing. I've been in education a long time, and as I'm thinking back, I feel very old as I go through everything. This is my 25th year in education, which seems just insane to me. I actually started out in first grade. I was a first grade teacher, loved teaching first grade, and then decided to go back and get my master's in educational technology because I just had always loved computers and tinkering with things. And then a job came up in middle school. So one year I went.
Jump.
Yeah, 1 year I went from teaching first graders, 7-year-olds, to teaching eighth graders. So I always say that I went from tying shoes 1 year to dealing with boys and hormones and kids that were much larger than me the next year.
Yeah.
It was a huge jump, but I absolutely loved it. I love those crazy middle schoolers and teaching technology and Legos and robots and starting the whole coding thing when it first came out, like 15 years ago. It was a lot of fun. Then about, 12 years ago, my husband took a job towards Cincinnati. Something in Springboro opened up, thankfully, because we needed to move down south a little bit further. So I decided to teach technology at our junior high and our sixth grade building. That was my wheelhouse. I loved it. I taught computers here for 3 or 4 years. And then that led me into my current role now, which is educational technology. So I taught for a really long time. I love teaching. I love working with kids, obviously. And now I actually get to teach the teachers how to integrate and use technology within their classrooms. So I feel like I've kind of come full circle. I worked with the little ones, the middle school ones, and now the teachers, and I get to do it all again.
Yeah, that's cool. I was just going to ask you if you were still teaching, and you are.
I do, yeah. Teachers reach out to me all the time, and they say, how can I integrate technology, or I've got a lesson, how can I do technology? And I actually go into the classrooms and I'll either team teach or I'll meet with small groups and work with students. So yeah, I'm still in the classroom a lot, and that's what I love doing.
Yeah. How do you think that you've built that? Like, where teachers will reach out to you.
Come to you.
Yeah.
It's taken time to build relationships, a lot of trust. It's my first couple of years. They were kind of like, you know how to teach? You know how to do this? I'm like, yeah, I taught for a long time. It helped a lot that my own kids are in the school district. So I built relationships with teachers, but I just was able to see at one elementary school. So I still had another elementary school where I didn't know the teachers. So I had to go in there and really get to know them. And then, during PD, I would, work with them. And then it was just that whole trust issue. And it's taken a long time, but now I really do feel comfortable. I can walk into any classroom at any time and they're like, oh, sure, come on in. Or, hey, I need to step out for a minute. Can you watch my kids? We just have that great relationship. So it's fun, but it has taken time. Yeah, I think it takes time, and you can't go in and want to change things and force your ideas or force the technology on people. That's not the way to do it. I think the best thing or the best advice with a person maybe starting a new role like this is to go in and listen, get to know their needs, and just baby step the whole way, and then just go in and maybe, hey, can I model a lesson, or what can I do for you? And you're in this role, I
Yeah.
feel like, as customer service and support. So it's going to take time.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an important message to send, because I also think another thing that happens is your role is something that's kind of outsourced. And then, they may or may not have the same person either year to year, or they might keep them for a couple years and then it's like,
Right.
there they go. And so that time is never available for them to establish those relationships in order to make something magical happen.
You totally hit that on the head. And I feel very lucky that Springboro has really, like embraced this role and realized the importance of it. Because, yeah, if you have one person coming in one year and out the other year, you're never going to develop those relationships. I mean, it's it's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. So bravo to your administration.
So I really do.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you about the STEM and technology program, because I know you said with your middle schoolers, you taught robots and coding and all of that stuff. How has that evolved into your role now? And I guess maybe talk about the creation of the tech and STEM program.
It's actually really, it's pretty cool. It's actually morphed a lot. We have at our elementary schools, we have 2 elementary schools, grades 2 through 5. And when I first got here in this role, it was kind of like your traditional tech classes. How to do slides, PowerPoint, docs, your traditional classes. But then what we realized is we need to integrate that more within the classroom. So we're like, okay, what does that traditional tech classroom look like? So what we've kind of actually done is we still teach those building block skills, how to log onto the computer, how to do the basic skills. But then we've actually morphed that into more of a STEM-based class, because it just makes more sense to do the coding, to do the robots, to explore the STEM possibilities than sitting out there and, typing for a half an hour, or doing a slide deck when you could be doing a slide deck in the actually like ELA classroom and integrate the class, integrate while you're, working on your content.
Right.
So it's been really cool. We have 2 really great STEM teachers who have embraced this model. And I mean, they have done a fantastic job with it. They're using some of the dot and dash robots, and they're using the Blockly code for like the STEM possibilities. But they also do a lot of things that are not computer based, that are just hands-on activities. They're doing a lot of cross collaboration between the art and the music and the technology to actually make it a full STEAM experience, which I kind of thought that way, but when you get all your people together, they're really thinking outside the box and bringing in bigger ideas than I could even imagine.
So do the tech teachers collaborate too with the like homeroom teachers?
They do.
Okay.
They do. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so it's a cool process, and I don't know how these teachers are doing it. I'm supporting them, with different ideas and trying to, get all the information I can. But let's say in 2nd grade, if they were working on habitats in animals, they'll get in there and say, okay, how can we best support you? So they might, do a slide deck. They might introduce the kids, how to do a little bit of research. Instead of Googling something, they might actually use databases. So they're building that whole tech site on there. Then maybe they might, decide to do a STEM activity and actually build a physical habitat. So they're trying to really, and then even the art teachers get involved, and they're actually, they're painting and they're building something with clay. So everything is in the elementary world is very cross curricular.
That's really cool.
It's amazing. They just did a whole at 5 Points Elementary. Our tech and our art teacher actually did a whole glow unit where they talked about, how does chemistry work with paint properties and glowing features. The art teacher painted all of these glow pictures and glow things. The STEM teacher got all of these glow materials, brought in black lights, talked about the different properties and how the chemistry is made up, had marble runs that were glowing in the dark, had black lights, they had different manipulatives they can build. And then for the last day of the celebration, they had all the art in one room. They had brought black lights in. The room was glowing.
Oh, how fun.
The kids were building. I mean, it was amazing. And the kids were using the vocabulary and they were talking about how the different properties were working. It was so cool.
That
sounds
is
awesome.
so cool. I know.
They're going to remember that
yeah.
too. Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing. And I went in there and I played for like 3 hours, and the kids were telling me all about how the different things were working together, and they had robots out, and it was just a total like just STEM like fun day.
That is so
That's
cool.
awesome.
You are not a one-to-one district, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about what the district is and how you address the technology? I guess that would be what, access?
Yeah, sure thing. And when I go to meetings and talk to parents and they say that we're not one to one, they're kind of floored because it's not the standard. It's not what pretty much everybody
Right.
in Ohio or the United States is doing. But we've kind of figured out that what works best in Springboro is we're actually a 2-to-1 model. We do that is we realize, do we want every child at all times in a classroom behind a computer? No. We have a teacher and a very experienced teacher in that classroom, giving lessons, breaking in small groups. Why would we have a teacher in a classroom if we have, 30 kids behind a computer and the teacher's up there? You have an expert in the classroom who is there, who is willing to help. Kids are on technology all the time. Mm-hmm. And I mean, obviously, I love computers. Right. I love technology. But does a child need to be on a computer all the time? I mean, you've got, they need to interact. They need to have hands-on activities. So that's one of the biggest rationales and one of the main reasons we decided not to go one-to-one. And thankfully, it is working for us. A lot of times what we do, even in our high school, is we do a lot of station rotations, okay? Because what we do is, and even our math department will do a lot of flipped classroom. So the teachers will go through and they'll actually, assign, the video the night before. A lot of our higher level math classes are doing this as an example in our pre-calc classrooms. They'll say, watch the video the night before, okay, see how you're doing. They'll work on the homework there within the class. And then they'll say, okay, let's go ahead. And if you're not sure about this topic or this topic, leave your computers at your desk, come meet with me at the table, and let's actually work on this. It's almost like an elementary classroom setting because that's how it works. They do that in the second grade classroom, the third grade classroom. So every child does not need to be on a computer all the time because you can effectively run a classroom with almost like a 2-to-1, break your class up. Half the class can work on something, half the class can meet with teachers, or even just do it in stations.
That's really cool, especially thinking about it at a high school level. Yeah.
And it's been a hard switch. Because you think about a high school, usually it's more of a lecture-based classroom where kids are working. But we've had a lot of our, middle school, high school teachers embrace that. Oh my gosh, like we can have a child work on, let's say, a program like Lexia or some like a math program, for example, get some great data, either work on it in class or the night before, use that data and then go through and actually work on small groups within the classroom. So we have seen a lot of really good things happening in class that way. And let kids, do the think, pair, share. Let them work in groups. They don't need to be on the computer all the time.
Yeah, and learn from each other. I'm curious, have you heard any feedback from the kids, like, especially the older kids, whether they appreciate it or whether they feel like it really helps them?
Yeah, we have. A lot of times the kids, and it's just different, like, chatting with a lot of kids. A lot of times the kids are like, you know what, like, sometimes they prefer paper. It's just they're kind of going back and they're like, we've been on the computer for so long. Or we go home and we're on Instagram, we're on Snapchat. Give us something tangible. Give us some paper. Let us just write. And it's just so funny because you think the teenagers would want the computers and the technology, but sometimes they just want to write.
Which I totally get because I'm like that too. Like as much as I love a computer and whatever, sometimes I just enjoy writing on paper. with a pen or a pencil.
We are a kind of a mixed environment as well. We are also a BYO. So if kids...
Okay, which stands for?
bring your own device.
Okay.
Or BYOT, bring your own technology.
Okay.
So if a child wants to bring their own Chromebook, which we always say it's easier to bring a Chromebook just because, the teachers know how to use it, the battery life. But if they prefer an iPad, if they prefer a MacBook or a laptop, they can bring in their own device as well. That way they don't have to borrow. And then when the time comes when there is a computer activity, they can pull out what they're used to using and they have it right there as well.
Now, I know some people would say, well, how do you monitor and manage that?
Sometimes it's a headache. I will be honest, it is. Our teachers have done a fantastic job. We've had this model for, for 13 years. We actually started with a BYO model because Chromebooks didn't exist at the time. That was kind of my first initiative when I came into this job. Invented yet. I mean, that's kind of dating myself. They came into existence kind of the couple years afterwards. So we have just been accustomed to bring your own device. And then when Chromebooks did come around, it made it easier to manage. But our teachers do a fantastic job of walking around the room, making sure kids are all on the same page. We're looking at some different software packages now that, can potentially lock kids into the different tabs to make sure they're not surfing around. Programs like that are very expensive, though. Yeah. We try to keep costs down to a minimum, so cost is always a factor, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, always the consideration and where the funds fall. I think I'm just fascinated by the 2-to-1 concept as well as like the bring your own.
I kind of love it. It was like, it's innovative in a way because everyone was immediately like, we need to put one in everyone's hands, but you're absolutely right. They don't need to have them all the time. And even the ones that do have them all the time, they're not using them all day. I mean, I get screen reports and they're on for 15 minutes,
Yeah. And I feel like within Springboro, like we're lucky because kids can bring their own devices.
Right.
I mean, they have the means to bring the
access,
devices. Yeah. But if they don't, we have a ton of devices that we purchased with ESSER funds a couple of years ago.
Right.
So if a child doesn't have a device, we have a loaner program that we just check out through our libraries, and they can just check it out all year. They can take it home.
Oh, okay.
We have hotspots as well. So if a child, needs internet connectivity, same deal. We have a program through our libraries. They can check it out. So I mean, it's worked well. We had over Christmas break, actually on Christmas Eve, unfortunately, there's a pipe that burst at our high school.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah. Literally right above my daughter's locker. Like, boom, it came down and it flooded the entire library and everything. It was a mess. And we had to go remote the week after Christmas. So, we had got 2 weeks off of Christmas. We had to go remote the week after Christmas. And everybody here was nervous. We're like, and my colleague who does secondary, my job, we're like, oh, we're fine. We got this. And everybody's like, do they have devices? We're like, yeah, they're fine. So we have about 2,000 kids at our high school. And we sat up there and made sure that kids had devices if they needed to borrow. We literally checked out 11 devices in 2 days.
Wow.
Because kids had either, if they had borrowed from school, they had taken them home over break, or they just had their own device at home. So thankfully, we're in a situation where kids have their own devices, or if they don't, they have borrowed them or they came to borrow them. So yeah, we're very lucky here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we were able to literally flip on a dime and say, okay, guys, we're going to go remote for a couple days. We set up shop. We made sure the teachers were okay. Teachers were able to come into their classrooms. Some had to move, but we went remote for a week and it was no big deal.
And that really speaks volumes for what you're doing because
we pulled out our own our COVID plans from a couple of years ago and cobwebs off, and we're like, okay, we can do this.
Yeah, well, I mean that's true though. That's one thing that came out of COVID and having had to do that is that now you can be responsive and react in these types of situations. Whereas before, I mean, when we were in school, if that would have happened, it would have been I guess we're using calamity days for the whole week and they're gone. You know, and now you can still have instruction.
Yeah. And it was not a big deal. And because we are a BYO school, you know, they bring your own. It doesn't matter if they had they had to use mom or dad's MacBook or whatever.
Right.
Because we're a Google environment, they could hop on. They're used to getting onto their meets. They can use anything they needed to. And it was very seamless. We had the attendance was fantastic those couple days. I mean, everybody showed up. They did their work. They were responsible.
I feel like that's preparing them for those that are going to go on to college or even into the workforce. There's so many remote jobs now. There's so many college classes that are being held online where you know, there's nobody in the room with you telling you what to do. You take care of your own business. Yeah. Like, you know, I think that's helping them prepare for that too.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
My son is a freshman right now in college, and he has 2 remote classes, and it's just, he has to log in. Some have meeting times. Some it's just self-paced. And by doing things like he did with COVID, he's fine. And I think our kids, like you said, Corinne, they have to be ready and prepared, and they are.
Life skills.
It is life skills. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just think back to when I was in high school, we had planners, but like I was a hot mess in college. Nobody gave me a planner, so I didn't have a planner. I didn't use a calendar. I don't even know how I like turn stuff in on time. And today's kids, it's like they just maybe have it a little more together than I did. I don't know, but I would have been in such trouble. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I mean, they have access to those calendars and things are scheduled, and I feel like lines of communication are more open, and I think it's great. So I'm glad at least you're seeing with your son that some of this is translating into college, and we're seeing that those life skills are valuable.
You kind of worry, like as an educator, you're like, am I doing everything right here to prepare 6,000 kids? And then when I get to see like my own kids going through this, and I'm like, okay, like these 6,000 children, well, I am doing something right, and it is transferring to the college level, because I don't see the college level. These kids are going to be ready. And our kids are successful in college when they move on to the next level, or when they go into a trade school or things like that. I feel like we have prepared them well with the technology and then everything that we're doing here in Springboro.
That's just great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it's a fun place. I always tell people I've got the best job in the school district. I really do. It's
I
not
think
a
you
job.
do. It sounds fun.
Yeah. Well, and especially, so you focus, when you said your colleagues, so you do what grades? K through?
I focus on usually K-5.
K-5. Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
And at one point I was K-12. And it was
I feel like I remember that.
And it was, and my wheelhouse is like 6, 8, and really middle school is stretching it.
Yeah.
And it was with 6,000, we have 6,200 kids, and I think 350 staff members. And I'm like, I threw up the white flag. I'm like, I need help. Like we just, and my colleague taught in secondary for a year, so it was perfect. So she does secondary, but it is so nice because we can cross over too.
Right.
I might say, hey, can you go help in second grade, and I'll flip-flop and go, help with juniors today. So we have that flexibility, which is nice too.
Yeah. It's so nice not to be an island. To have somebody to collaborate with and
bounce ideas off of.
It's definitely valuable.
Yeah. Or just to figure out something in Google where I'm just like, okay, I'm stumped. Like, let's work through this together. It's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
For sure.
I'm a little bit jealous. Teachers, you can now earn contact hours toward grad credit for listening to the podcast.
Visit fortheloveofedtech.org for more information.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our discussion today. If you like our podcast, please don't forget to subscribe to get notified when new episodes are released.
For more information about our podcast and to access links and resources referenced in this episode, check us out at fortheloveofedtech.org.